Good day, everyone. We are the first presenter, and our topic is about annotation of Antonio's Morga, Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas.
I wrote this book to chronicle the deeds achieved by the Spaniards, to document the events of this country, the Philippines. Through this, I share my experiences and observations, and of others. May this book be a window to the past for future generations and for them to learn from.
Yung video na napanood nyo is magbibigay siya ng idea about sa topic natin na Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas. Before we proceed, let me define first what is annotation and successos. Annotation is a note of explanation or comments added to a text or diagram. The annotation is additional information related to a certain case in a document or other piece of information. It might be a message with a comment or explanation. Successos is an event, happenings, or occurrences. Ito yung tinatawag natin ng mga kaganapan na meron tayo sa bansa natin. Antonio Morga's Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas, considered as one of the most important literary works which pertain to the colonization of Spanish in the Philippines, published by Antonio de Morga in Mexico, the year of 1609. The work discussed the political, social, and economic situation between that of the colonizing foreign country, Spain, and the colonized country, the Philippines.
Good day everyone, my name is Ronel Colina. I will discuss the purposes of the successos. According to Dr. Morga on 1609, the purpose for writing successos is to highlight the deeds achieved by our Spaniards, the discovery, conquest, and conversation of the Filipinas island, as well as various fortunes that they have from time to time in the great kingdoms and among the pagan people surrounding the islands. Why did Morga write Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas? Who is Antonio Morga? Antonio Morga is a Spanish lawyer, high-ranking official in the Philippines, and lieutenant general and head alcalde and a historian. Who is Jose Rizal? Jose Rizal is a Filipino, ilustrado, and propagandista. Why did Rizal choose to annotate Morga's over the other Spaniards' chronicle? This circular account was more trustworthy than those written by religious missionaries. It was the only opposed to religious or ecclesiastical history of the Philippines written during the colonial period. It appeared to be more sympathetic, at least in the parts to the Indios. Morga was not only an eyewitness but a major actor in the events he narrated. Now, what can infer Rizal Annotations. What were its flaws? Rizal commits the error of many historians in criticizing the events of past centuries according to the concept that correspond to present standards. Rizal attacks on the church were unfair and unjustified because the abusive priests should not be taken to mean that Catholicism is bad. Some of Rizal's annotation were exaggerated. This is the two types of annotation made by Rizal. First is straightforward historical annotation, where Rizal amplifies or corrects the original one. Next is annotation which is reflect his strong anti-lyrical basis. This is some exaggerated footnotes of Rizal. First is the pre-Hispanic Filipinos had an advanced knowledge of metallurgy, the evidence being the fine cannons made by Indio named Panday Pera. And next is the existence of pre-Hispanic shipbuilding and industry. Next is Mr. Carlo Ariola for the continuation of the topic. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carlo Ariola, and this is the continuation of the discussion of purposes of Sucesos. So why did Morga write Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas? So he could chronicle the deeds achieved by our Spaniards, the discovery, conquest, and conversion of the Filipinas Islands, as well as various fortunes that they have from time to time in the great kingdoms and among the pagan peoples surrounding the islands. So what does this say about the Philippine history? As the Philippines had been a colony of Spain, the histories of the Philippines written during the colonial period were nothing but chapters in the larger history of Spain. In short, what was available was not a history of the Philippines, but the history of Spain in the Philippines. Now, why did Rizal make footnotes on Morga's book? By inserting footnotes, we are given the chance to hear the oppressed point of view of Rizal. What was he trying to point out in Morga's notes? Number 1. Filipinas possessed an independent culture before the arrival of the Spaniards. Number 2. The Filipinos were decimated, demoralized, exploited, and ruined by the Spanish civilization. Number 3. The importation of Spanish civilization did not necessarily, and certainly not in all spheres of interest, improve the state of the Philippines.
Here's are some background or information about Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas. Antonio de Morga is author of the book. This is one of the first books ever to tackle Philippine history. Book that described the events inside and outside of the country from 1493 to 1603, including the Philippine history. Consists of 8 chapters. Discuss the political, social, and economical aspects of colonizer and colonized country. The content of book is based on documentary research, observation, and personal experience of Morga. Rizal is secondary source of the book due to his annotation. First, what is annotation? A note of explanation or comment added to a text or a diagram. Annotation ay ang pagdadagdag ng komento sa isang text or diagram para makapag-provide ng explanation or criticism sa isang text. Next is sucesos, which means events or happenings in the particular country. This is Las Filipinas. Basically, it means the Philippine island named by the honor of King Philip II of Spain. Here's some results objectives. To awaken the consciousness of the Filipinos regarding their glorious ways of the past. To correct what has been distorted about the Philippines due to Spanish conquest. To prove that Filipinos are civilized even before the coming of the Spaniards. There's a person behind, that's why Rizal wrote about the Philippines' pre-colonial history. And his name is Ferdinand Blumentritt. Ferdinand Blumentritt was an Austrian teacher, secondary school principal in Les Mourites, lecturer and author of articles and books in the Philippines in its ethnography. Government. Our forefathers in pre-colonial Philippines already possessed a working judicial and legislative system. High literacy rate. The Spanish missionaries exploited the baybayin for their own ends, learning and using it translate their goals. Artillery. Our ancestors were very proficient in the art of war aside from wielding swords and spear. They also knew how to make and fire guns and cannons. Advanced civilizations, our ancestors possessed a complex working society and culture, replete and works of arts and literature. Results 3 proposition. Number 1. The people of the Philippines have a culture on their own before the coming of Spaniards. Number 2. Filipinos were decimated, demoralized, exploited, and ruined by the Spanish colonialization. Number 3. The present state of the Philippines was not necessarily superior to its past. And here's the importance of Rizal's annotation to the present generation. To awaken in the Filipinos the consciousness of our past, to devote ourselves to studying the future, to first lay bare the past in order better judge the present, to survey the road trodden during 3 centuries, to prove that Filipinos had a culture of their own prior colonization, that the Filipinos were not inferior to the white man, to shatter the myth so-called indolence of the Philippines, to reduce those Filipinos who denied their native tongue into rotten fish, to seriously study Tagalog and produce a comprehensive Tagalog dictionary, to embrace the generic term Indio, or in today's case, Filipino, with all its negative connotation, and turn into one dignity and nobility.
Why did Rizal choose to annotate Morgas over other Spanish chroniclers? Morga was more objective than the religious writers. The secular account was more trustworthy than those written by religious missionaries. It was only civil as opposed to religious or ecclesiastical history of the Philippines written during the colonial period. It appeared to be more sympathetic, at least in parts, to the Indios. Morga was not only an eyewitness, but a major actor in the events he narrated.
Umigting ang pagnanais ni Rizal at iba pang mga nasyonalistang tao na maging malaya sa kamay ng mga Espanyol. Inisip niya rin ang kapakanan ng mga Pilipino, lalo na ang mga taong hindi alam kung ano ang ibig sabihin ng pagiging malaya sa kanilang sariling lupain. Kasama sa kanyang mga anotasyon ang mga paglilinaw at pagpapalawak ng mga detalye, pagtanggi sa mga pahayag kung kinakailangan, at kumpirmasyon laban sa iba pang mga sources. Sa pamamagitan din ng paglagay ng mga footnotes sa gawa ni Morga, mabibigyan tayo ng chance na marinig o maipakita kung ano ang point of view ng mga Pilipino sa panahon ng Espanyol. Nais niya rin pabulaanan ang mga bintang na tayong mga Pilipino ay hindi sibilisado, tamad at walang utang na loob. Pinahihintulutan ni Rizal ang mga Pilipino noong 19th century na suriin ang mga estado ng buhay ng Pilipinas noong Spanish colonization. Gusto niya ipakita ang mga depekto nito at pukawin ng mga Pilipino na kumilos. Ngayon, atin namang i-discuss ang purpose ni Rizal of annotating Morga's work. Sa pamamagitan ng pag-publish ng mga annotated version of the Morga's Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas, or Events of the Philippine Islands, that originally published in 1609, ang intensyon ni Rizal ay hindi lamang ibigay sa mga Pilipino ang kanilang unang kasaysayan o ang kasaysayan bago dumating ang mga Espanyol. Ngunit, nais nitong ipakita o ipaalam sa kanila na ang bansa natin ay mayroon ng sariling kultura at pagkakakilanlan.
Here's the purpose of Rizal for annotating Morgan's work. First is to awaken the consciousness of the Filipinos regarding their glorious way of the past and their authentic culture and identity. Next is to correct what has been distorted about the Philippines due to Spanish conquest, and to prove that the Filipinos are civilized even before the coming of the Spaniards. In Rizal's annotation, he included that the Filipino people had an own culture before the Spanish conquest, and the people that time is advanced. He also included that the Filipino were decimated, demoralized, exploited, and ruined by the Spanish colonization. And he also included in his annotation the colonial history of the Philippines, being in prolonged period of suffering that many people had been subjected to. Overall, Rizal emphasizes that Morga was the evidence and the primary source of history in the Philippines. Rizal argues that Filipino before has their own culture and did not require a new religion or civilization from Spain. That's all. Thank you.
The discovery of Morga's Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas proved to be serendipitous to Rizal. He had been rethinking the idea of the Filipino not as the people who were equal to their Spanish colonizer, but a people with a unique civilization that was destroyed by colonization. Rizal found the answer to his idea in Morga's book, and it was this work that he decided to reprint with his annotations. This lecture will discuss how Rizal wrote the Philippine history of this time, with what has now been considered as his second major work. The Morga annotation provides the seeds of the idea of how the Filipinos should view themselves amidst a growing nationalism that eventually led to formation of the nation.
The significance of Rizal's annotation, the Morga. Simply, which the Morga tells the story of the Philippines. Rizal's annotation was well targeted. Its purpose is to awaken people's awareness of their past, which has been buried in their memories. For the first time, it allows them to witness the majesty and splendor of their race being stolen away at the point of colonial contact. Now that the existence of vibrant Filipino civilization has been revealed, it is hoped that after reading his work, his own people and countrymen will feel a sense of pride in themselves, their home country. It is a historical study on the Philippines produced for Filipinos. Until Rizal, no one had written the story of the Philippines from the perspective of the Filipinos. Everything that had previously been published had been done by Spaniards, who were either chronicling the religious achievements in the Philippines or simply reinforcing their race supremacy over the backward Indies.